Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Wire and welcome to this lovely chat. Let's just call it a chat about Standard 6.1, all about communication. It's a biggie, this one. And we haven't done this one before. So we thought it'd be a good topic to have a bit of a yarn about in terms of how you'll be successful and get all of the 7 ticks that you need in this lovely standard. Marie Davidson is my name, and before I go any further, I really would love to acknowledge and have everyone acknowledge that we are on Aboriginal land, and I am on the land of the Biripi people here in Port Macquarie, mid-North Coast, New South Wales. Please feel free to unmute yourself or type into the chat if you would like to acknowledge the First Nations traditional custodians of the lands that you are joining us from today. I welcome you to do that now, and let's acknowledge all of the elders, past, present, emerging, and their deep connection to the land and waters here and wherever you are. I want to acknowledge all of you as well, all of those people who are in the various throes of preparing for their service excellence accreditation. I've got a little poll for us. Now, in this standard 6.1 communication, it talks about the various ways that we might be communicating with our community. I'm going to use that very sort of general collective term to talk about all the people that we work with to help us to get these amazing outcomes. And I'm using the tool Zoom today, but I don't know if this functionality is in Teams. Those of you who use Teams, you can tell me. But I'm going to launch a little poll here, and even without turning your camera on, you will be able to participate in this little poll. So the first one, here's a question. Let me just get onto the right one. Here we go.
What is she doing? She's doing a poll there.
There should be a poll on your screen there now, and you should be able to use your mouse to click on your answer. Where are you in your ACES journey right now? I'll have you vote. Where are you in your ACES journey right now? I've got 2 people participating live here, or 3 people participating live. I'm going to get a couple of different
swing of it. Done and dusted, working on improvement.
That's you, Danella. So you can click on that one for us.
I haven't been in your shoes over the last.
Right. What am I clicking on, Marie?
I reckon you're clicking on done and dusted, working on it.
Yeah, I was going to, but I was like, oh, will I?
Okay, go for it. There we go. Okay, so I can see now that I've got 2 of my 2 participants have participated. So I'm going to end the poll. And what I can do now is share the results with you on the screen. And you can see the results of that little poll there. 50% of our participants today are fully in the swing of it, and 50% of our participants today are done and dusted, working on improvements. So I wanted to share that with you as a way that you can get instant feedback. A lot of us are working online these days, and we're having our meetings online. We're doing parts of our assessments online. And there's various little, I'm going to call them digital tools, such as this little poll that you can use to get feedback, to get instant feedback, or, to ask people how they're going with something, or what they're thinking about the meeting, or, are they feeling heard? Those sorts of questions that you might want to elicit from people, you can use simple little polls like that. We're going to do a couple more of those throughout the hour. So stay tuned. Stay tuned. Aren't you sad if you're watching the recording, if you can't play with us live today and do our little polls? But there they are. They're very simple to set up in Zoom. I don't know about Teams. If you can do that, someone in the room might let me know. But I'm going to show you one other tool that I use a lot called Mentimeter to set up nice little tools and nice little polls and evaluations. So I'll share that with you soon. All right, let's go here. And as usual, we've got some great resources to share with you about this standard, and they'll all appear on the Highwire website through your ACES client portal, which I'll tell you about after if you don't know about it. How to undertake a stakeholder analysis today. Do you need a communication plan? Probably, even a simple one. How can you ensure your communication is accessible? And we'll talk about easy surveys and polls, which we just had a look at one of. I'll give you some evidence examples as we go through, and we'll talk to you about some gaps that we see in this standard as well. So first thing we want to do is have a look at the requirements of the standard. So what I might do is pop into the chat there the link to the evidence guide, and you should be able to see the chat option on your webinar toolbar, and I'm going to pop a document in there called the evidence guide, and you'll be able to click on it and open it up. Unless you've got the evidence guide on your desk, which many of you do, keep it there. I know you keep it there so you can always be looking at it. But if not, here it comes for you. Just let me get through these 20 clicks.
I didn't see the chat anymore.
Almost there. There it is. There it is. Now you'll see the evidence guide magically appear in the chat any second now. You can click on that and you can go to page 66 with us if you'd like. I just want to say hello, Del. Nice to have you here. On page 66 of the evidence guide,
I've already got it.
see the standard 6.1 communication or thereabouts. I can open it up on the screen as well. Why don't I do that and we'll have a look together. And we can have a look at those 7 indicators. Here we go. And let's rock on through them and talk about, you know, really best practice, if not good practice, when it comes to these 7 indicators. They're a good mixed bag, these ones. I do like there's a bit of variety in this standard. The communication standard. What's it all about? Communication systems and strategies will ensure information is disseminated internally and externally to all key stakeholders. So everybody who needs to know and understand about you will be able to know and understand about you and all the things that you do. And the intent or the outcome of this standard is that communication informs and improves outcomes. So that's what it's really all about. Okay, so here we go through the 7 indicators of success, or the 7 requirements. Internal and external target groups, communication processes and timelines are defined. Defined. Now, it doesn't actually say documented, but when it says defined, it means we've thought about it and we've got a very clear idea of who we are to communicate with, when we are to communicate with them, and how we will communicate with them. So if not written down in some sort of register,
You're not
then
mute.
how could it be? I'm just going to mute Danella only because I know she doesn't realise that I can hear her chitty chat there. So unmute yourself if you do want to talk with the group, Danella, of course. All right. So what we would see, I'm going to call it a stakeholder register, or I'm going to call it a communication plan, which has got a list of all of the people that you want to keep close, all of the people that you want to share information with, all of the people that you need to regularly catch up with, or all of the people who would be subject to formal agreements, such as partnership agreements, subcontracting brokerage agreements, those sorts of things. Right, so some of your stakeholders, it's much more critical to communicate with them than others. So you really would want to have something that helped to make that easy. So I'm thinking a stakeholder register or a communications plan. All staff are expected to convey information accurately, succinctly, and free of jargon. Oh, free of jargon. Accurately and succinctly and free of jargon. So we'll talk in a minute about how we do that. How are we really making all the information, particularly for clients or young people or vulnerable people, how are we making sure that all the information that we want to share with them is is accessible. It's in accessible language. It's in accessible formats. So you can see some of the examples there. It talks about posters and brochures and memos, and some organisations have newsletters and communiques and things like that. And it's not just for clients, but it's for all of the people in your organisation as well, and some of your key stakeholders. So we really do love it when we see information packs, things like that for clients that are in highly visible formats that are also verbally explained. All right. Now, I know you won't have evidence for us that things have been verbally explained, but we do interview your clients and we do ask them, how did they get all the information they needed to know about the rules and regs and the ways to be able to connect with your service? All right. So if you are verbally explaining things, maybe have a checklist of all the things that you did verbally explain. So, you know, we can see that through your intake process that you have gone through that with the clients. The next one says here, internal external communication is maintained. Now, when it comes to internal communication being maintained, that will be things like having a meeting structure, you know, the ways that people regularly communicate with each other internally. So that might be something like, well, this is how often the board meets, and this is how often our senior managers meet, and this is how often our coordinators and team leaders meet, and this is when team meetings should be held, and all those sort of things there. When it comes to external communication, if you say you're going to meet with your community every quarter to get feedback, or if you have some advocacy groups and things like that, that, you know, that you maintain that. If you say you're going to produce a newsletter, that we can see that, you know, that is maintained. Even surveys. Right? If you say in your policies and procedures that you're going to survey your clients or community every so often, whatever the period is you decide, that is consistently maintained. We can see evidence of that. Yeah. A lot of organisations are communicating quite a lot through their website these days. So we look to see that that is up to date, you know, that the news and all the things that you would share on there, annual reports, even policy documents and things like that are up to date. One thing you should know, before we come and do an assessment, if you've got a contact us box on your website that says type your information in here and we'll get someone to call you back, we will test that. So I will fill in my details in that contact sheet, and I would expect somebody to email me back, you know, probably maybe within 24 hours, you know, especially if it were a complaint or a piece of feedback. Yeah, so we do test those mechanisms. Number 4, meetings are effectively managed with notifications. So that would be agendas, papers available for people. So if there are any supporting or sort of, you know, pre-information that was required for meetings, that we could see that people got that well in advance, that minutes are prepared or lists of actions are prepared. Not everything needs to be minuted, but we do think where there's a need to follow up on particular actions that have been allocated to people, that's probably worth keeping a list. But formally, through some acts of some legislation, you are required to keep records of meetings and decisions. So please, you know, be aware of the records that are required in relation to the various legislation that you have to be compliant with. Mm-hmm. But we do see sometimes there's just, you know, minutes that are almost verbatim what was said in the meeting, and I can't think of a situation where that would ever be necessary. Even though you've got AI to help you to, you know, type all that out now, you have to really think about who's the audience, you know, who is it that's reading this, and is this useful and helpful? Number 5, communication mediums are effective and appropriate for the audiences and the processes. This includes providing safe, secure and accessible communication channels for children, youth and vulnerable people. So really thinking about your audience and thinking about the range of mediums that you're using to communicate with them. Is anybody missing out? Would anybody experience a barrier trying to access information? about your service or trying to apply for something or talk with you. So communication, I'm thinking of it as two-way. So how would they talk with you? How do you talk to people and how do they talk with you? Those sort of things. And there's a really good list of example documentation there that you could use. We often see strengths in this. We see that organisations are using a range of communication mediums, and that would vary from websites to posters to newsletters to text messaging their clients occasionally when there's changes to a program, flyers, brochures, all those sort of things there. Really easy ways for people to click on a link on their mobile phone and give feedback. We do see a lot of that. Really good practice. Number 6, almost there. Communication processes are seeking feedback and develop actions that foster continuous improvement. So what this is about is we do want to see that two-way communication. We want to see that you have set up mechanisms or forums for clients and community to be able to talk with you. So how are you listening? How are you inviting them to talk to you? Are you really promoting that? Are you really active in that? We often see that response levels are low. We often see that. And we hear organisations say that they struggle a little bit with getting the rate of feedback that they would like. And so that sort of realisation requires that you try something different, doesn't it? It requires that you ask your clients and community, how is it that you would like to talk with us? And I've seen some fantastic examples of organisations that have some standards set for every person in their team to contact 5 clients every month. And they have a standardised feedback form. It might only have 4 questions on it, but it is done with a very good sort of sample size, and it's done by every person in the organisation. So that's a little KPI that they have, that every month they have to ring up 5. They'll be able to go into a portal and pull down, or they might be allocated 5 records randomly, and they would ring up and complete that sort of, feedback verbally with the client. And that's very empowering for clients. Where that's happened, clients tell us that they really like that opportunity to be able to talk about the service that they've received. So thinking about those sorts of ways and means, Lana's here, and Lana works for an Aboriginal community-controlled health organisation. And as a service with a GP clinic, they are required to survey a certain number of patients. And I know there's always a tension there because of the type of survey that they're sort of sometimes forced into using, and it's not really very user-friendly. Lana, if you wanted to say anything about how you've managed to get feedback from patients through the clinic there, that would be a really helpful thing.
Yeah, so we generally do 2 kinds of surveys. So we do the one that we have to for our clinical accreditation, which we often don't find actually super useful, the feedback that we get. But to encourage participation, the participation we need, we pretty much have extra staff in the waiting room who actually sit with people and take down their answers, because that's pretty much the only way we can get people to actually complete them. So some people are willing and able, and will sit there and do that themselves, but other people would rather just have a quick chat to someone. So we just take down answers for people. And then we also run our own kind of more targeted surveys. So we do them for clients as well as stakeholders. And we generally get quite good input to those. We do also give people the opportunity to do that with someone, but we send it out, put it all over our Facebook. We have links everywhere, and people are actually pretty good at getting providing feedback for those ones.
Excellent. See that? Sitting down with people in the waiting area and asking them a few very targeted questions. Yeah. So then they're, if you're not getting the rate of response that you want, this is an opportunity to go back to the drawing board and say, well, if we wanted to get 100 a month, what would we have to do to get 100 a month? Really sort of set the bar high. Whenever we've asked clients for feedback through the assessment process, we've never, ever, I can never, over 100 assessments or more, I can never remember any client saying, no, I don't want to tell you what I think of this service. They always really appreciate the opportunity. They appreciate being asked. So I can only imagine that they find it empowering. So, empower your clients and community in different ways. And the last one here is that appropriate information sharing protocols are promoted and practiced. So in South Australia and New South Wales, there is a different guidance around information sharing protocols. So look up the guidance in your jurisdiction. I have got those links for you in the PowerPoint slide. And both of those sources of information, both of those regulators would have various resources and tools available for you as a starting point. So that's the good news. So there you are. There are 7 requirements under that communication standard. I'm hoping as we went through that, you're able to give yourself lots of ticks. I want to go just over here now, and I want to touch on a couple of areas that we sometimes see challenges for organisations, and hopefully give people some things that might be useful as they think about not just meeting those requirements, but improving communication with their clients and community. Now, I really love this model. I've been using this model for a long, long time. Now, forgive the sort of lingo in it if it's not your lingo, but if you wanted to change public to community or to client, if you change the word public to community, this might sit a little bit better for you as a framework to think about the levels of engagement. So you see the arrows and the dots. The arrows and the dots are actually quite descriptive when you look at them. They're not just there for, a good-looking visual. So level 1, if we want to think about these as levels, level 1, information, so informing people. So it's very one way, isn't it? So we might inform our community about certain things that we do via our website, right? So informing is one level of engagement. Consultation. So we're obtaining and considering feedback or input on issues, ideas, decisions, planning, projects, programs, all that there. So consultations, you see how it says obtain and consider? It just says use it to make your decision. It doesn't say we will do what you said in that consultation. A lot of people who are consulted sometimes think, oh, well, they asked us and we said and they didn't do it. So unless you're sort of coming back and letting people know why, they can be left with that question. Involvement, a level of engagement here, which is about working with our community to understand issues and problems and include them in identifying options for moving forward. So involving them, identifying options for moving forward, probably seriously considering implementing those options if you're going to involve the community or you're going to involve clients. Collaboration. This is partnering with your community, seeking advice and innovations that become embedded as much as possible in decisions. And then empowerment. This is a level of engagement we'd really love, wouldn't we? But the degree of difficulty is bigger if you want to move to this. Now, this is, you might have heard of community engagement processes such as co-design and participant-led and community-led and those sorts of things. And this is where final decisions are made by the community who are one of the players implementing those decisions. So they're at the table. They're not just at the table, they are actually directing how things go. So, this is aspirational, and this is also not necessarily to be seen as on a spectrum, but rather just various ways that we can engage our community. But it's important that community understands what these various things mean to you and to them. Like, does it mean you'll do what we say, or does it mean you're just listening? So it's important to, I suppose, put the language and the definition around it for the community as well. Right? So I think most organisations I meet, they do various parts of these different ways of engaging the community. Does anybody have any examples of this empowerment level of community engagement that they'd be willing to share, where the community really are the driver and they are implementing? It's all right. It's okay. I wanted to share this with you because this is, for me, this is the first step in developing a communication plan. Now, I call this stakeholder analysis. And you remember that first indicator that it sort of says, you've sort of defined who it is that you'll communicate with, and you've got a bit of an idea about, who they are and when and how you want to communicate with them. So I think the very first step before developing a communication plan is to do a stakeholder analysis. Now, it doesn't have to be as fancy as it sounds. It can be very, very easily done with a big piece of post-it paper and some post-it notes and a few texters. But there should be many people around the table, because I think stakeholders are somewhat, somewhat subjective. So some people would see these people as a stakeholder, other people wouldn't. And so things can be missed if you don't have many people around the table. So you get many people around the table and you get a big piece of post-it paper, or if you're online, you just get a whiteboard and a bit like this. And this is what I do. I get 4 quadrants. And I simply start letting the group put into each of the quadrant where the stakeholders sit. Now, here's the quadrants again. And this is just one example, but I like this one. It's nice and clear. We want to have a look at all of our stakeholders through 2 lenses, if you like. Firstly, how powerful and influential are they? And how interested are they in what's going on? So if you're thinking about doing this for your whole of organisation, that's fine. But what I like to do is do this for various new programs and new projects or changes. It doesn't matter. You can do it on any level. You can do it on an organisational level, and you can also do it on a project level. So just keep that in mind. You'll have stakeholders variously for all different things. But what we want to do is say, who are our stakeholders? Firstly, you want to just get a great big long list of stakeholders. So that's why I like post-it notes, because I'll be going, well, them, bang, them, bang, them, bang, them, bang, and get a great big pile of post-it notes and then plot them on this matrix. So stakeholder groups, power and influence. So how powerful and influential are they over our objectives? Not over us as people, but over our objectives. So let's say you've got a strategic plan and you've written in that strategic plan your objectives. Or let's say you've got a vision statement as an organisation. How powerful and influential is that stakeholder over you achieving your objectives? All right, so that's at an organisational level. If you're thinking on a project level or a new program level, you think of the project objectives and you think of the program objectives, and you think, how influential is that stakeholder over our achievement of our objectives? And the other lens you're going to look at is, how interested are they? How important is it to them? Right, so that helps us to decide on how we're going to start communicating with this group. So you see there, number one, this group we're keeping close. If you've got your post-it notes and you end up putting 3 or 4 different stakeholders in that group, and I'm going to say probably mostly clients would sit in that group and staff would sit in that group. I just see whenever I do project stakeholder analysis, they're always in the number one group, right? Sometimes funders are in there too. Then they are people that are highly influential and powerful in terms of the success of your project, your program, or your organisation's objectives, and they care a lot. Right, so if you have a new program and you need to sort of have 10 people turn up each week, then that client group becomes a very important stakeholder, don't they? Because they really care about the impact, they really care about the program in terms of the impact in their lives, and they're highly influential in terms of its success. Because if they don't turn up, you don't have a program. So once we've decided that our clients are a number one priority, then we can start to think about how we're going to communicate with them. So we'll be communicating with them in a way that keeps them nice and close. Can anybody think of some examples of ways we would communicate with a number one priority stakeholder? And we want to keep them close, so what are we going to do?
Emails and phone call.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Right, even text messages. Right? Even regular updates, inviting them to any meetings about what's going on. Right, so their voice is always in it. Yes, excellent examples. Now, if we've got a number 4 stakeholder in here, these are stakeholders who have very little influence on the outcome or our ability to achieve our objectives. And, you know, their care factor's pretty low. Now, I'm trying to think of a number 4 example of a stakeholder. Oh, if you're running if you're running a youth group, I would say the local school. Right, you are going to be getting young people coming from that school, but they're not a number 1 stakeholder. So what we're going to be doing there is maybe sending them a flyer. Yeah, we're not going to necessarily have them at the table.
Yeah, newsletters. Yeah.
Great, a newsletter, perfect. A bit of a poster that they can put up on the notice board about the youth group. Yeah, fantastic. So whatever, I mean, you can do this on an organisational level, you can do it on a program or a project level, but it is important that you identify the different levels of stakeholder interest because you'll communicate with them differently. And this can mean your communication can be very targeted and therefore efficient. Okay, so you're getting to the audiences you want to get to effectively, but you're also doing it efficiently. Is that helpful? Is that helpful? So you do that first. So on a big piece of paper, I would have my post-it notes in the various quadrants. Right. So I'd have my big list of post-it notes first, and then I put them on whichever quadrant I believe that stakeholder fits on by thinking about how influential they are and how much interest they have in this program or in us as an organisation. And then I will develop a communication plan. I've got an example for you here. Just give me one moment to bring it up. Now, this is a simple communication plan. You can make yours look beautiful and you can do whatever whatever's add extra columns as you would find it useful. But this is a very basic communication plan that I would use for any project that I was delivering, or, you know, if I were thinking about doing a big promotional activity to push a certain type of consulting that we would do, I would use this. Just let me open it. Sorry. And this also fits with the requirements of service excellence. So you've got it covered if you just have something like this. Here we go. Now, I'm expecting that my friends at Tamworth Family Support Services would probably have something fairly whiz bang when it comes to a communication plan. Why do I keep losing it? What's happening? Sorry. There we go. Sorted. All right, so this little document here has sorted our stakeholders into internal, external stakeholders. It has a column for the priority based on that matrix that we just looked at. So we've done our stakeholder analysis and we know whether there are 1, 2, 3, or 4. Now that's helpful if you want to sort of sort by importance, you know, like, oh, have we communicated with these people, or how do we want to communicate with these people? What sort of list should they be on to receive whatever kind of communication? Now, the relationship with them, I haven't done that for the internal stakeholders, but because you might think, you know, the relationship you have with them is that they're staff or that they're managers or something like that. They might even be a board member. But the external relationships are varied. So I've put some examples down there. The relationship you might have with a stakeholder could be, well, this is a partner we've got an MOU with. This is a partner we've got a formal agreement with. This is just a collaboration. We've got, you know, referral protocols in place with this one. These people are a consortium member. These people are contractors. These people are suppliers. So it's good to understand the relationship that you have with that particular stakeholder. All right, particularly if it's a formal documented one. And then what's the mode of communication that we're going to use? Now, you might have 3 or 4 modes of communication there. It might be a monthly meeting. It might be they get a copy of our newsletter. It might be we invite them to the interagency that we host. Okay, so whatever the communication mode or modes are, I should put that there, all right? And the frequency. So how often do we want to communicate with them? And when you've done the stakeholder analysis, you might say, oh, sending them an update every 6 months is fine. All righty. So you can talk to me if there's any other columns you think would be useful to add, but this is a simple sample. Okay. Hopefully helpful. But I think to have something like this could be very, you know, make it easy to review and update and really consider against your strategy, your objectives, who it is that you consider to be your top stakeholders. Now, I just want to use the time that we have left now to just go through a couple of things to do with the Privacy Act and making sure your communications are accessible. I did find this 20 strategies for writing in plain English. I really like the resource because even though it can be a bit overwhelming, 20 strategies, I'm sure that if we have a look at this together, someone, could you let me know if you are seeing this website? It's called Daily Writing Tips on your screen.
Yep.
Thank you. Now, I'm just going to scan this, but you can see that this could be some relevant PD for people in your team who may struggle with writing in plain English. If you don't already have a style guide in your organisation, you know, for writing in plain English. So understand your reader and their needs. So that's audience first, right? An introduction, a way to...
Sorry, Marie. What you're saying is that when you click that link, it's supposed to open up another page. Am I right? Because at the moment, I think what I'm seeing is that the title 20 strategies, and at the bottom is range or medium, succinct and free jargon, and so on. There's no per se list.
Let me do that for you again. Thanks for letting me know, Del. That's very helpful. Here we go.
Yep, that's much better. Thank you.
All right. So Having some things in the document to help with navigation, such as a contents list and page numbers and instructions or an introduction. Organise content in a structured way so it makes sense to your readers. Use examples and anecdotes, lists and tables and images and things like that. Keep sentences short. I know it seems obvious, but it seems difficult for some people to write succinctly, particularly in documents that are going to be read by clients, yeah, or community members, or people that might have lower levels of literacy skills. Okay, so you want to keep your text really simple. Avoid indirect language. So, you know, be as direct as you can in your language. So, you know, letting this is a must do, or this is optional, or, you know, you will have choices around, you know, so being really clear where there's going to be certain rules or regs and things like that. Don't shy away from technical terms, but avoid jargon or legal terminology. You know, if you are going to have to use that terminology because it's part of, you know, it's part of the requirements, it might be part of legislation, you can't sort of, you know, dance around that, then have a table of definitions or have a glossary of terms. That could be helpful. You know, this is often missing from policy and procedure documents that we look at, for example. If, you know, use a question and answer format. That's a great idea, isn't it? So FAQs and, you know, a list of questions, you know, big questions that people often ask, and answer those in your documentation. Decide which acronyms and abbreviations would be appropriate. Omit all unnecessary words, even unnecessary punctuation. Now, I often see punctuation on PowerPoint slides and I think, you don't need that. All right, so think about how to use hyperlinking to help people to navigate to other documents that they might find helpful or supportive. Even things like having lots of white space and having lots of images can be helpful, as long as the images support the text. Don't just put an image in there to have a picture in there, because for people who are using images to be able to understand or comprehend, they could find that quite confusing. And apparently having real photos and things like that is much more powerful for the brain than having things like cartoons and icons, all right? So, you know, thinking about these universal design principles and how it makes your information a lot more accessible. And the other thing about accessibility is having it really well organised and structured in a shared drive with some excellent naming conventions. This is something we can suffer with a bit as assessors, and, you know, we've looked at lots and lots of organisations' shared drives. So if I was a new staff member in your organisation, I could find it overwhelming if you haven't sorted out or put into a structure the access to information, and having good sort of search functions, you know, things like that. Teach people how to use the search functions. Will you get down? No, I'm going to close the door on you. No.
Hey Marie, just a quick question. You were talking about navigating through hundreds of documents. So basically, you're saying that having a efficient document mapping goes a long way, and that's also crucial when you are being surveyed or audited. That the effort that is taken to maneuver through a document mapping.
Yeah, we like when things are hyperlinked. I mean, no, I like it when it's easy to find or jump to things, but I like also a shared drive, which is well set up, will enable the search function, you know, to type in a keyword. It will make it a lot easier for people to get to the document if you've thought about your naming conventions. And for me, sometimes this goes back to having a framework for your policies and procedures. And by framework, I mean the structure and the numbering of your policies and procedures is quite consistent. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is a POL policy, this is a PRO procedure, this is F for form, this is T for template, or something like that. That can make the search functions in your shared drives a lot easier for people that are trying to find their way around. Because people tend not to read whole documents anymore. If they want to look up something about annual leave, they'll type in annual leave, and then they'll see where it appears, let's say in a range of documents in that share drive, for example. So making it as easy as possible and getting feedback on that, asking staff, how easy do you find it to locate documents that you're looking for?
Thank you.
Yeah, look, we're not precious as assessors. As long as you don't give us your whole share drive and say go for your life, you'll find all the evidence in there. As long as you categorise it for us, we're pretty happy. But we're thinking about staff and other people that might need to find their way around those documents. Now, if I'm a client and I've got a grievance or I want to make a complaint, I want to be able to find that information very quickly. So I think, going to the website and having complaints and feedback form there, that's a great way to do it. Right, you dogs are going out. Out, out, every dog, quick. There it is. So this is just a summary of the requirements out of the service excellence standards. So you want to have a range of mediums that best suits your audience. You want to have it succinct and free of jargon. And you want to have safe, secure and accessible communication channels for all people. So again, you go back to your stakeholder analysis and you think, right, who are our number one stakeholders? Can they get the information that they need? Can they talk to us? Are we talking to them? All of this must align with the Australian privacy principles and various information sharing protocols in your states. There's a really good Australian privacy principles quick reference there. So there are 13 principles, and you should be, I suppose, thinking about reviewing your communication practice with those 13 privacy standards, privacy principles. So that's a great resource for you. Information sharing guidance in New South Wales, a really good source is, it's DCJ actually. They've still got that old link there, but it does go to DCJ. I'm just checking that is current. Yes. I'll share that screen with you so you can see they've just got the old link there, but it goes to the current information. Let me just show you that. Right, so the DCJ website has a number of resources and tools to help you share information. There's that there under Chapter 16A of the Privacy Act. That's what that's referring to there. Right, so you've got some resources that are very helpful there. Also, it covers your information sharing practice, what you should be doing. So that's a super helpful resource. And similarly, there is a link to the South Australian guidance as well there for you. Just open that one up. Oh, lovely South Australian people. And they've got on their website in South Australia, it doesn't mean you can't use it for good practice, other people. They've got an information sharing flow chart that's quite helpful. I've seen other organisations use that. Just show you that one there, Lana.
We use that flow chart as well. It's been helpful just for people, like just a quick thing to look at rather than having to read through everything. It's very quick and easy.
Yeah, lots of great resources on both of those websites there for information sharing. So the way that we would assess that is we'd be having a look at how you've gained consent, and we would find that usually in your client information management system. So we'd say, can you show me where you've gained consent or where you've got an information sharing protocol in place with this client when we're having a look at the client records with you, okay? So that's how we would be checking that. Yeah, there's a lot in this one, isn't there? There's a lot in this one. Now, I'm going to share a little quick poll with you. This is a tool that I use called Mentimeter. And what you do is you get your phone out now. So I'm going to get you to do it live so you can see how easy it is. You get your phone out and you remember how to use QR codes, yes? So flash your phone at this QR code and you will be able to participate in this little poll. You get 3 entries, I think, to describe Highwire. That's us. You can make it up. You know, be nice. But if you type in 3 words to describe Highwire using your mobile phone, then what I'll share with you in a moment is how that sort of appears using this tool. So you can put any question in there. You can run a whole evaluation after a program or after a meeting or after an interagency meeting. You can do a quick evaluation of the meeting. You know, ways to ask people about the quality of your communication. You know, you can even do that. You can send a link to all of your clients' mobile phones if you want to, using this tool. Let's have a look what's happening behind. Molly. Here we go. Let's have a little look. Shh, Molly. Shh. There we go. So this one I set up to create a little word cloud. And you can imagine if I had, you know, a lot of people attending the meeting and I just wanted to pose one question, I want to get some feedback from people, or I can pose 3, 4, 5, up to 10 questions if I want to. I can even use it to run a survey. And I can see the results and share the results in real time. So, you know, these sorts of polls, just think about ways that you might be able to use them to get feedback from different sorts of stakeholders on different sorts of things. I might show you another, just show you another of those sorts of surveys while I've got that open. Where's one that's got a bit more information in it? Might do. Okay, there's a session evaluation. This will give you a sense of how deeply you can use it if you want to as a tool. So this was a session that we ran as part of a leadership program. So after every leadership program, we would have an evaluation. And so what people did here was they used scale to vote. So they simply slide their slider along to where they want to put their feedback. Then you can have a few different slides. Well, not many responses in that one there. So there we go. So that tool's called Mentimeter and it is free. But there's other ones you can use called Slido if you wanted to include polls and questionnaires. If you want to use Zoom as a tool, you can set up surveys in Zoom that people can do, you know, as you're going through a meeting or as you're going through a collaboration. Yeah, so feedback doesn't, you know, it doesn't have to be hard and it doesn't have to be locked down to a long sort of paper form. Questions, comments? Are you happy with what we've talked about today in terms of maybe some improvements for your communication? Talk to me.
No questions. It's just that now based on the information that you have provided. It's just a matter of sort of preparing ourselves. And I think next year, June. So yeah, just sort of getting our ducks all in a row. And I think there's sort of a few new things you have introduced as well on how to sort of tackle the ACES. So
Great.
which we need to include that as well in our preparations.
Good. Well, you've got about 30 other webinars that you could watch if you want to be really up with it. Del, you'd be very sick of me by then. I'm including in the resources this week those that I've shown you already, but also I'm sharing with you a really good document control register that if you don't have a document control register already, you could use this as a starting point.
Yeah, I do.
And what I like about this register is it's got some instructions at the beginning there, how to use it, what the things mean. It's got some drop-down boxes that enables you to sort by the type of document and the category of document. And here are the menus that you're using there. So that's only going to interest the creator of the register. But I just want to draw your attention here. I think everything else is fairly self-explanatory. But this column here called retention, some of your records, some of your completed records would have a requirement under the legislation for the length of time that they are retained for. One example I can think of is that records in relation to child protection matters. So any child or family who is subject to a child protection matter, those records have to be retained for a long time. And I'm not going to say how long because I might get it wrong, but under legislation, there's a requirement. And if that person is an Aboriginal person, it's even longer, right? So so we've put that column in there in case any of your records, your completed records, are subject to retention periods under legislation. So training records, for example, even including induction, I think it's 30 years. You know, so important to be aware of any retention requirements around those documents. Okay, so this is the start of a master document register that's got a really good policy framework around it because you can see the numbering here. That's really helpful. The numbering is the framework itself. Can you see that there?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm sharing that with you because I think a lot of organisations kind of struggle with how they're going to keep all of their documents in order. But that is our time. And I'm always very thankful of people who show up and use their voices and their ideas in the space here because lots of people do watch the recording. So I just want to thank Lana and Danella and Josh and Del for being the people in the room today. I have appreciated having you here and I'll see you again on the wire. Goodbye, everyone. Good luck with everything.
Thanks, Marie.
Thanks,
Bye.
Marie.
See you, Marie. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.